Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Superman Lois, Season 2, Episode 11. So, at the tail end of this episode, I feel like there's a possibility that we might get some more creative stories within this show. It could give me very much more so hope for a Season 3 of Superman Lois than I had hoped for Season 2. So there's that. Like, the ending of this episode is like, man, like, this is like an interesting, like, end, but like, we just had to go through such a vanilla episode. We just had, like, this episode was like, we got some action, some stuff, but like, really, it was just very vanilla. They have to refocus back on like the same like stories that we kind of left off at from a number of weeks ago when we go back with Jonathan and Jordan and Lois Lane from this other alternate world. And I think when I go into spoilers, whenever I probably just say Bizarro, I think a lot of people should understand that it's like Bizarro Jonathan. Like, I don't want to have to go on and say Bizarro Jonathan every single time, because Superman Bizarro is dead. So like, I feel like I could just say Bizarro and people will know exactly what I mean. So when we get into this episode, we have to refocus back on the breakup of Sarah and Jordan. Great. Just... And we also have to have things for Lois Lane to do in this episode, which I'm like, oh no. Please, can we not Dawson's Creek this frickin' episode? I don't want to wait till the end of the episode is over. 'Cause then I'll get something interesting. Do. Anyways, yeah, this just vanilla episode. But but the interesting thing is Superman, aka Clark Kent, comes back to his Earth. And so I was like, thank God. I'm like, please don't tell me Superman is still going to be stuck on that other Earth. No, he comes back. I'm like, oh, what a relief it is. And so Clark has to come back and get to know what is going on during that whole time that he's been missing, finding out that Lana was to win the election, and he's like, what? That's the reason for the goofy thumbnail. Clark Kent finding out things because he's been gone for a month. Come to find out, I guess time is different between Bizarro World and their Earth. And so what seemed like, I guess, a day for Superman being gone, it was a month. Bizarre. So, like, Superman got all that kind of information all in a day's time. Wow. You would have thought it would have been like at least like a week. That would have made a lot of sense. But for a month that he was like gone for a day. Anyways, so we have, of course, John Henry Irons that is to now be relegated to be Gadget Guy. That sucks. John Henry Irons is now the equivalent of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Billy. Hey gang, it's Morphonomic. I'm gonna give you some gadgets so you can go on and save the day. But he uses the gadgets, and so does Natalie. So, like, give him props for that. Some big props, right? Some Greg props. Anyways, so yeah. So this episode refocuses stuff that was to be 2 episodes ago. And we have Lana, who is to be kind of the focus in this episode, and I'll let you know why within spoilers. Other than that, just a lot of just going into things, and we have a lot of talk about Clark's secret in this episode, and I was like, wow, like this is actually some really good, interesting story here, where Clark is just talking to his family about his secret, because eventually Jonathan is to bring it up, because in my brain, like, however long ago, I was to go on and immediately say, it's like, well, like the whole Candace thing and the whole, like, Superman secret thing, I'm like, how is that not one and the same? And really, it's kind of hilarious because that's exactly where they went within the writing of this episode. And I'm like, yeah, like, God, like, just let me know, CW, if you need some writers. Let me just pitch something. Just might as well. Just with how, like, everything, I'm just, like, saying, like, weeks ahead of time where they're going to write this show. And I don't know, there's sometimes, like, but especially with this episode, like, the way, like, some people just kind of deliver lines in this episode just kind of looks goofy. But maybe that's just me. Let me know in the comments below if any weird delivery stuff is kind of going on in these episodes for anybody. But anyways, I think it's about that time. I've talked long enough about this. Let's get into spoilers. Hopefully I can remember everything, because there's a ton of going on in this episode, because it's freaking soap is coming back. So during fact, let's go into that double 5 time territory, because about that time yet again to go into this thing called spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this episode. So in the beginning of this episode, we of course have to go through the recap of 2 episodes ago, where again we have Jordan delivering that line of "You're breaking up with me." I'm sorry the guy that plays Jordan in this episode, but, like, that was just, like, the worst. I'm sorry. Like, I know acting is hard. I know freaking, like, but there's going to be memes coming out of a lot of this stuff on this show, and that is probably going to be one of them, in all honesty. Because there's just some goofy things kind of going on with deliveries and episodes. So anyways, besides recap, so beginning of this, we have evil Jonathan, aka who I will call Bizarro. So we have Bizarro coming back, and is to, of course, want Jonathan to fuse them together as the doppelganger and Jonathan are to eventually try to fuse together here. But Superman is to come in to stop all of that. And Jordan goes on and tries to fight Jonathan. And Jonathan has some crack about, like, oh, well, I guess the weak one ended up getting the powers in this world. And so Jonathan goes on and is to just kind of, or Bizarro is to fling Jordan, and then is to fuse with Jordan. Superman breaks it up, and Jonathan flies off, and so Clark is tempted to fly after this Jonathan, and here's also the goofy thing. So Jonathan and, like, so here's the thing. So with Bizarro Jonathan, no one, I guess, could tell the difference between, like, regular Jonathan and Bizarro Jonathan, but you can tell the difference between Clark Kent and Superman. Anybody? How is it that, like, when you have Jonathan and his duds, and his Superman duds, like, he's not a completely different character? They should have called him, like, the like the solar sun or something like that. Like, hey, who is this guy? Is he a Kryptonian? That's what they could have gone with. But no, like, it seems that Lana is talking to Bizarro and saying, like, oh, like, Jonathan, you must be, like, heavy on the XK, buddy. You need help. Because we'll get to that. So, Jonathan flies off, and so now we're going on and having Superman go on and talk with his family, and like the aftermath of all this, where Jordan, I guess, may have bruised a rib or something like that. Seems like he's having some like towel being put on his chest, and Jordan is talking about how Bizarro is just stronger than him, and so yeah, so like we go on, and Lois is thinking about calling John Henry Irons to figure out how they can like gadget like help defeat these Bizarro superpowered characters. So we go on into this episode after like the dust is settled, and we then have it where Lois is to talk to Jordan about his breakup. And so Jordan is going on and texting Sarah, blowing up her phone like nobody's business. And Lois is saying, it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't go on and text her so much. And Jordan's like, well, like, Jonathan's fine. Like, there's nothing else really going on right now. And so Lois is like, well, you know what? Like, how about I just, like, take away your phone? Just, like, in a nice way. Not in, like, I'm going to take away your phone. Yeah. Like, I'm going to take your phone away. Yeah. I'm going to just... No. So we go on, and at some point, Jordan is to decide to, instead of text Sarah, he decides that he wants to go on, write a letter to Sarah. And when Jonathan eventually is with Jordan talking to him, he's like, what is this, like the 1800s or the 1880s? Like, why are we writing letters? And Jordan is like, well, like, Mom told me that I shouldn't text her, that maybe I should go on and just do something else, like really like think about my words before I put them down. And so Jordan reads the letter, and or Jonathan is to read Jordan's letter, and Jonathan's like, well, really? Like, you want to go on and tell her all this? And Jordan's like, well, yeah. So here's going to be yet another thing that Clark and Lois are going to have to bicker with their kids about, just because it's like, well, like, you didn't come to me before you were thinking about doing this? And of course, like, that's just, like, any little tiny thing to just have some, like, disagreement take up more time in this episode. There is always that. So, like, you would think, like, it's Jordan's life. Like, let him decide who he tells that he has superpowers to. Like, Clark eventually, like, took a long stretch of time in Smallville to eventually choose certain people to tell them that he had superpowers. And so, like, Sarah seems like a nice enough gal, and Jordan is to possibly think that they're going to be together forever, maybe. But with the later part of this episode, it doesn't quite end up that way. So, but let's go on. So, Clark is to have to go on and possibly try to figure out where Jonathan is, and Bizarro Jonathan. And so while the family was talking, Clark was asking Jonathan if he has gotten any visions, and Jonathan is to mention that he was to get a vision like before when he was with Candace, but like now he hasn't had any, and so Clark is like, well, like you're gonna start to get visions, and so like let me know via tweet or something like that. Like let me know when you go on you have these visions, so we can try to like figure out where Bizarro is. So Jonathan does get a vision, and this is to go to have Superman go off to Main Street. So so Clark goes off to Main Street, and while he's trying to be face to face with Jonathan, gonna duke it out, all of a sudden Lana is to get in the way and be like, "Oh, hey Clark, yeah, you've been gone for a month. Hey, like, where have you been? Like, you were on assignment, and like this and that, and like you couldn't have Facebooked, tweeted any, like you could have Instagrammed." You couldn't have sent anything out just like as a congratulations. And Clark is like, you know what, Lana, like, you know, I'm sorry, but I'm like really busy right now. There's something going on in the farm, and like I'm just so busy, and like I'm sorry, I just can't talk to you right now. And so by the time that Lana leaves, Jonathan is gone. So he's like, fuck! Like, gosh darn it! Like, I missed my chance to get Bizarro Jonathan. So, and then later on in the episode, we have, of course, Lana and Sarah talking about like how, like, man, like it's so weird. Like, I bumped into Clark and he was just so not present, and like he's gonna like drop everything to just like, oh yeah, let's catch up. Like, you know what? Like, maybe he's freaking busy. Give him a break. Maybe he fell asleep at the wheel and like he killed somebody, and now he's rushing to try to like deal with something. Maybe he murdered somebody. Maybe there's a reason like he's just pushing you away right now. Maybe you might wind up dead. Maybe that's why. He's protecting you. So Superman goes and meets up with, re-meets back up with Lois, and so now he has to get a download of what it all happened because he's been gone a month. And Clark is like, "Oh my God, Lois, you should have told me that like I was gone away on like some assignment." And well, that's the thing. Superman never goes on and like gets a debriefing from like Lois of like, hey, where did you tell everybody where I was? Like he should have taken that time because like he's going back to like Smallville where like people are going to be like, hey Clark, hey, how's it going? Like someone is going to go on and ask him like Superman doesn't take the time. So Superman goes on and is to now get an update from Lois of what had all happened during the month that he was gone. And he didn't know the time difference and so on and so forth. Between like one day in Bizarro World is a month here. So Clark is to find out that Lana was to become was elected the governor, I don't remember. So but it's gonna be really interesting because eventually we have Lana, who is to have an office and everything like that. We're gonna see that later. So Clark is to go on and kind of get a little bit of an update of what has happened during the whole last month of him being gone. And so we have John Henry and Natalie that are trying to come up with this device to try to neutralize the Bizarros. And they're trying to come up with this gadget all the while both John Henry and Natalie are talking about this other world, and Natalie's reflecting on this bizarro world like she's reflecting on their world, and that quite possibly they could have the same thing happen to this world as they did theirs. And so Natalie is just so like concerned about what's going on, and John Henry Irons is like, well, hey, we're just gonna like, we're gonna take things as we come, we're gonna cross that bridge when we get to it. So paraphrasing, but it is what it is. So we have John Henry Irons and Natalie who come up with this gadget, but then find out that they try to just use electricity as a power source and black out like half of Smallville doing it. And so they're like, well, we need to come up with a different power source. And they end up coming up with X Kryptonite, which when eventually John Henry Irons is to test it out, it doesn't work out that well. And I'll explain hopefully why later. So Jonathan, Bizarro Jonathan. So we have it where Lana and Sarah are to be talking about Jordan and talking about Clark and how they're not present and so on and so forth. They're not a Christmas present or holiday present. Some holidays may be coming up, like Cinco de Mayo. Check that out. Tomorrow, there's probably going to be a reason why I may not be here for Cinco de Mayo. Anyways, pushing on. I'll probably go on and review Doctor Strange, but that's going to be really late in the day. But I'm going to try to hopefully get to watch that film. But anyways, pushing on. So we have Jonathan that arrives at Lana's home, and come to find out, Lana is to give Sarah these keys to her car, and so Sarah gets this big, like I have a car moment, and so she starts to drive off, and Jonathan appears, and Sarah's like, well, hey, Jonathan, or you just appeared out of nowhere. He's like, well, yeah, I just landed. And she's like, landed? So we have Jordan just wearing all these brand new duds. And so Sarah's like, okay, this is really weird. Like all leathered up and all this stuff. Like, man. So Sarah goes on and leaves and doesn't think anything of it, as she's just kind of weirded out by Jonathan a little bit. And like as if also like Jonathan is possibly like having some kind of like talk to Sarah, as if there's gonna be like a love triangle kind of bizarrely in this story. That would have been a lot interesting, but they didn't go anywhere with that. So Jonathan, instead of going after Sarah, is to go after Lana. And so Jonathan, or Bizarro, knocks Lana down here and then takes her to some slaughterhouse. And Jonathan has put the medallion on Lana so that way the other Lana from the alternate world could eventually come here, so that way she can be prepared to fuse with her alternate self. Because it seems that the Grandmaster plan is have all like the most powerful beings on the Bizarro world to find their doppelgangers and to fuse together, and that seems to be the master plan. If Jonathan can't get his, then possibly like Jonathan is going to go to find alternative characters to fuse with themselves. So we have it, of course, where also Superman is, or Clark is to get updated about Jonathan, and how Jonathan is to finally break and to have talked about Candace to Lois and Lane, or Sam Lane. So we go on and we had Clark confronting Jonathan about that, and Jonathan is saying it's like, well, hey, like, wait a minute, like, you've kept a secret from me, like, for a bulk of my entire life, and like, I just kept a secret about Candace, like the woman I possibly love, and like, you're gonna tell me that's like that what you did wasn't worse than what I did? And Clark is like, well, I was protecting you. It's like, protecting me from what? I don't get it. So like, yeah, like, it honestly would have been nice if Clark would have let his like close family know right away. Like, his mother and father knew. It's not like he kept it from everyone. But yeah, like, I think his kids should have known right away. Like, you could go on and say that maybe like you probably could not have trusted them with this secret because maybe they were too young, and maybe they would have blabbed to somebody. But still, like that could have been like a big, massive secret that you could have really told them when like they were way younger than what they really are. But anyways, that's just me. So so Superman is again to get another vision where Jonathan is to tell him about this slaughterhouse. And so we also have it uh where where uh where Lois was talking with Sarah at Lana's office about Jordan, and how Lois used to go on and used to date all these like horrible guys until she found the right one. And maybe Jordan is going to be that horrible guy. I don't know. Like, that seems like a weird kind of story for Lois to like. So is Lois just telling Sarah to just go through a number of people until she finds the right one, and Jordan is probably one of those? Or like, was Lois saying that story just to like, I don't know, like, um but it's kind of interesting because Lois was to go on. The only thing really interesting with Lois for I don't know how many seasons now, Lois was to kind of keep secrets of all the horrible guys that she had ever dated from Clark. And like, I was like, wow, that's actually kind of really interesting for this episode, for to somehow or another have Lois maybe be keeping a secret from Clark. That's kind of interesting. And we had Sarah talking to Lois about Bizarro Jonathan. And so Lois goes on and is to tell Clark about Bizarro Jonathan, and that he was over by Lana's house. And so it's like, oh, like, there's a connection there. It's like he must be going on and trying to find all the doppelgangers and fusing them together. So Jonathan ends up getting the image or the vision of the slaughterhouse, and so he's like, oh, okay, well, I gotta go on and I gotta run down the possibility uh, of Jonathan being at this slaughterhouse. So we have John Henry Irons and Natalie that are to go to the caves to try to come up with this other power source. And John Henry goes on to find the X Kryptonite and use that as a power source instead of electricity. And they also go on and look at the portal, and John Henry Irons is telling Natalie here that, like, you can't just go into this portal because it's not exactly safe. I'm like, well, yeah, like, if you just went in there, you would probably get killed because you need, like, armor or something like that. And so I'm thinking at some point maybe John Henry Irons is probably going to go through the other world, or maybe Natalie will, because in this episode also they're hinting on the fact that Natalie is to get her own set of armor, and she is to talk to Hetty, the AI, and she is to mention that it seems that her like suit is like getting updated. So Natalie's keeping a secret from her father, and I'm just gonna be like interested to see how that like just completely is to go on and conflict with these two characters, because it feels like Natalie may not be talking to her father about stuff like this, and so like we'll see how that all comes to a head. So Lana is to come through the portal, and now both John Henry Irons and Natalie have to fight Lana. This, of course, is Superwoman Lana, or whatever the equivalent of, maybe it's Superior Lana, I don't know. Because like there's several different kind of Superman or Superwoman like versions, where if you go on to Crisis on Two Earths, like there's like a different kind of Superman there, and then there's Ultraman. So yeah, like kind of very goofy, odd approaches of certain characters. But anyways, and I don't know if there really was like a Wonder Woman there. I think Ultraman might have been like their equivalent of Wonder Woman, but it is what it is. Pushing on. So we have, of course, John trying to find Bizarro Lana, and I'll go with Superwoman, because why not? Because there isn't a Superwoman here within the story, so maybe there will be. I doubt it. It would be interesting. It would give some characters some interesting things to do in the story. Oh, we also had it where like Clark was to go to the fortress to talk to his mother, and his mother doesn't know anything about all this stuff, like of what to really do. Like all of this is new to her as well as it being new to everyone else. And so like it doesn't seem like the Kryptonians had like a like a thing to just handle all of this stuff. So which is like, well, that's nice that they're like incorporating that in. Um, and it would be like, it would be interesting if there was to have gone on and had us like find out in this episode that Krypton wasn't all lost, like to where there like technically is still like another Kryptonian like planet somewhere that we can just kind of play around with for a couple of episodes. But I don't know, I guess that's just me. So like just to play around with some kind of like Kryptonian thing or something like that, where you find out like, oh, there's another Kryptonian planet out there. Do some like a space episode. That would be kind of cool. But let's get back. So John is fighting Lana, and so Lana, of course, is speaking backwards, and so she's like, move, and he's like, you're not going anywhere. And so Lana is to just take her boot on this guy's face. And she's like, well, I'm just going to crush you now. And Natalie goes on and stabs her with the Kryptonite, because when John tries to use this equipment, it doesn't do anything to this girl. It actually just heals her injuries, because I guess he hadn't like perfected yet what this thing actually does. And why not just get like, couldn't they have found like gold kryptonite? Like gold kryptonite is to take people's powers away like immediately, and you would have thought they would have like figured that out. Smallville did it in later seasons. like for any Kryptonian that is to go on and have gold kryptonite just wipes out powers. So why didn't they ever go with that in any of these stories? Just like come up with the like kryptonite neutralizer. Wouldn't that be an interesting just kind of like thing that they can kind of add into here? Like they have uh pink kryptonite that does something freaking weird and goofy. I'm still hoping for crap brown kryptonite. What does crap brown kryptonite do? Because it had not just normal brown kryptonite, it has to be crap brown kryptonite. Anyways, it's a joke. So, pushing on. So, John Henry Irons and Natalie are to take Lana down, and so now we're focusing back on Superman and Bizarro Jonathan. So, Jonathan is to make his way to this slaughterhouse, and that's technically what Jonathan was hoping for. Because Jonathan is to come up with a way to take down Superman. So, because of course, like, Jonathan has dealt with, like, his father for longer than this other Superman has. So, like, yeah, like, Jonathan will easily know how to take this guy out. So all of a sudden we have it where Superman is going to try to protect Lana from this explosion. And like this really just reminded me of like Smallville days when Superman was to have to protect Lana from like these explosions, and he would have to like shield her and like protect her from dying and being killed and whatever. So we have it where Superman is to have this this like gas tank thing explode, and all these kryptonite things come flying at Superman, and so Superman falls over because he's weak with kryptonite, and Jonathan stabs Superman, and I'm like, man, this is kind of reminding me of God, what was it? The Justice League Doom, where you had these like contingency plans for all the Superman character or all the Justice League characters, and Batman was like, "Oh my God, somebody's taken all my plans." And Justice League Doom was such a good movie. Like any of those movies that came around that time of Justice League Doom, so good. I haven't really caught the recent ones, but I also saw a trailer of Jon Stewart Green Lantern being in some animated thing. I'm like, please tell me that's going to be a series, because I will watch the crap out of that. I love Jon Stewart Green Lantern. If that's a series, I'm watching that. That's going to be sweet. I don't know if it's tied into anything, because I didn't see the trailer yet, but that looks awesome. If you don't know Green Lantern stuff, like I'm just kind of curious what that show is. I haven't seen the trailer yet, but eventually I'll check it out because I want to see what that is. Because they were talking for the longest time about doing a Green Lantern series, but it was a live action one. But maybe they don't have. Maybe it's not going to work out as a live action one. Maybe they're just going to go on and like, because the original ideas that they had for like a Green Lantern thing, not interested at all in the stuff that they were doing. But like if we go on and we have just another animated series just to kind of see if people are interested in this, then heck yeah, I would. I love Green Lantern series, especially if it looks really good. But anyways, so enough said about that. So, but that looks freaking dope. Like just an image that I saw of Jon Stewart, I'm like, hey, yeah, big Jon Stewart fan. I loved Guy Gardner and Jon Stewart. Those were my two favorite Green Lanterns. I don't know why. I just liked them. So we have Clark that is, or we have Superman that is now like kryptonite all over his chest. Lana is to go on and have to save Superman and pull all these kryptonite pieces out. And while that's going on, we have again Jonathan that's trying to go and fuse back with his doppelganger. So we now have Lana who's coming to where this other Lana is, and Jonathan is meeting up with Bizarro Jonathan to fuse again, but this time around it seems that Jordan is to go on and put a pretty good fight against Jonathan, even to the point of we have it where Jordan is flying. He's actually like freaking flying. They hinted at it, but now at the end of this episode, it seems like he's actually flying. But then he can't actually control it. So he's flying. He's beating up Jonathan in the air. I'm like, oh my god, this is awesome. But then all of a sudden, Jordan is like, what? Like, I'm way up in the air. I'm probably going to die because I can't control this. So Jordan and Jonathan are fighting in the air. And when Lana is to pull all these kryptonite pieces out of Clark out of Superman, because Superman is desperately telling Lana, it's like, please take them out, hurry. Like I need to go off and save all these people. So Superman goes on and flies to go and grab his kids, or grab both Bizarro Jonathan and Jordan, and drops them. And so we, of course, go on, and Jonathan is still not, like, completely, like, nullified here. Like, we still aren't, like, getting rid of this Bizarro Jonathan. You would have thought, like, they would have come up with some equivalent to have taken Jonathan down here, but no, they still don't. So we go on, and so after this moment, we have Clark going back to his family, and so Lois is to read the letter that Jordan was to have about him, like, possibly revealing his secret to Sarah, because that's how much she meant to him. And excuse me. So we have Clark that is going to his family, and he's like, you know what, like, I think it's possibly time for me to go on. And, like, you guys just kept talking about my secret in this episode. And, like, maybe with all what's really going on here, maybe at some point it's just going to get to where, like, my secret might get revealed anyways. And so Clark is, like, asking his family, it's like, well, like, what do you guys think? Like, should I go on and should I start telling people? Should I pull a Spider-Man 2 and just reveal to almost everybody just by accident that I'm Superman? So they're like, yeah, go on, go, absolutely, yeah, do that thing, yeah. So Clark goes on, and so Lois is now scrambling from her being, like, kidnapped, and so she's trying to make it back to the office to talk to Sarah. And, like, Superman was to take Lana back to her home, and so Lana was asking Superman about Jonathan and how, like, he was a little, like, kind of XK'd up. And Superman is like, well, like, there's, like, that's a thing, like, this was a different Jonathan than you know. And so Lana's like, oh, okay. So, like, Lana's like, oh, okay, well, I can deal with that. And so Lana's to mention that Superman has been saved by Lana now twice. And Superman and Lana are to be, like, the best of friends. And so now we go on, and we have Clark that is to show up in front of Lana's car. And now Lana is to just be a little confused, and so she stops her car. So she's like, Clark, like, you gotta get out of the road. Like, I gotta go on. Like, I'm so frazzled. Like, it's a busy day and this and that. And Clark is just like, well, yeah, like, about that day that you had. And he was like, I was there. And Lana was like, well, yeah, I know that you, like, I saw you before and we had that moment. And he's like, no, you don't get it. So Lana is to just be like, okay, like, what should I be getting here? So Superman goes on and is to take off his glasses. I'm like, yeah. And then he goes on and he starts flying like he did with his kids before. And then he uses his freezing breath to blow on this tree and make this like tree all frozen. And then Lana's like, oh my God, Clark Kent is Superman kind of thing. And it's like, and that's how the episode just kind of ends, with maybe having Superman revealing to everybody, I'm hoping that he's Superman, because man, wouldn't that be just a cool story? I would be on board for that. Especially if everybody's to know Clark Kent is Superman, and like Clark was to mention to Lois how, like, on the other world, like, there was so much about that family being so, like, famous, and there were so many things that he didn't like about that family. But we had Lois that was to tell, like, Clark, it's like, well, hey, in this world, like, things are different. Like, we're different people from that world. And so that kind of convinces Clark, it's like, well, maybe I can go on and Civil War Spider-Man reveal my secret to everybody. And what I mean by that is because in the Civil War comic books for Marvel, I know this is a DC thing, but there was the moment where, of course, during the Civil War thing, Superman just went on TV and took off his mask and revealed to everybody that he was Peter Parker. And like, I'm hoping that this is the exact same thing. I'm hoping that this doesn't stop with just Lana. I'm hoping that this goes on and he reveals to everyone. And I'm hoping by the end of this season we get that, because that's what I want for the show. Because I think finally revealing Superman to everybody that he's Superman and Clark Kent, I think just needs to happen for this show to have a real creative change of things. And kind of like how we had kind of like in the new, or the Rebirth. It was either the Rebirth, yeah, it was in Rebirth, because New 52, Superman was to go on and just be this other Superman, and then that Superman died. And then we bizarrely had old Superman that came back, and he was in hiding for the longest time. And he was in hiding with, like, him having the black suit on, which was really cool. And it was good that the Justice League movie did that. And sort of. And CG, sort of. And then Lois was to go on and eventually be Superwoman in that story, and all of the family was like supered for like every single one of them. And so it just, like, we had this old Superman that is to be very knowledgeable about all of this this stuff, and is to understand a number of things, because he's a much more experienced Superman. And it was just really cool to have that character back in that world, giving us, these really interesting stories. So I'm just kind of curious where this show is going to go now, because it feels like by the end of this episode, it's given me a new kind of lease on life to just be like, man, there might actually be a good episode coming somewhere down the line here. So hopefully I've covered most of the stuff in this episode. I knew I took forever, almost the length of the episode, to talk about this, but it's been having to like regurgitate all the stuff from 2 episodes ago and all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on in this episode also. And so with that said, even though like it was just kind of a very like vanilla episode, still it was there was some good things about it, but not all of it was good. But with that said, I'm gonna get out of here. Bye everybody. Bye everybody. One thing I forgot about was the confrontation between both Sarah and Jordan, where after Sarah was to talk to Lois about her her mother being missing, and Lana doesn't go to the police; she goes right to Lois, bizarrely, and Jordan tries to talk to Sarah about the letter that he wants to try to give her, and Sarah's like, "Well, I don't want your letter. Like, I know." To where it's like, yeah, Jordan has like bombarded her with text, and so it's just like saying that this girl just wants nothing to do with him anymore. And the more and more that Jordan probably starts to like continue to press her, the more it's just gonna blow up in his face. So so with that said, still there might be some mending offenses eventually at some point, but really it's like these two are over with. It's an over and done with relationship. So uh going going on, I'm assuming that Sarah's gonna end up with somebody. Cause it's possibly going to be that Lana is to, or that Lois is to probably put it into Sarah's head to go off to be with someone else, and so she'll probably end up with somebody else. I don't feel like Sarah and Jordan are going to get back together, so it's what it is for that story. But I just wanted to kind of clear that up because that was the only thing that I thought I forgot about within this episode. The whole like Sarah like talking to Lois, and I think that's technically it. So that's it. I'm going to just get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.